So now the question is, how did I deal with all this anxiety? And we're going to talk about that in depth. But first, I want to share something with you that might seem a little bit foreign when you first hear it. You know, this anxiety and these thoughts and this worry that I was having about my wife, these thoughts and emotions are actually what I realized, they are not me. And your thoughts and emotions are not you. And that might take a minute to sink in if this is something you haven't studied or practiced before, because most of my life, I always thought, my anxiety, my worry, my fear, my thoughts, right? Thoughts like, I think we all have thoughts like, what if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? What if I've got a job interview coming up and I'm anxious about it, right? Because I really need the job. So there's this anxiety that's a feeling that can be spurred on by a thought of, what if I don't get the job? Or vice versa, right? The thought, what if I don't get the job, might spur on these feelings of angst and anxiety. So the first thing I want to share with you is kind of gaining some separation between you as a being and these thoughts and emotions, creating some separation. And I'll give you guys some tools to do that. This is just kind of laying the groundwork that this might be a different philosophy than you've practiced before. So again, back to these thoughts and emotions, they are not you. They are something you experience. And as soon as you can start to see that, you can almost see like this, almost like spaghetti, right? Or a knot in a shoelace. As you pull it apart, you start to see, hey, okay, I'm not that. It just feels that way when we're experiencing an emotion. And this can sometimes happen because of something called ego. Let me explain. Ego, at least how I perceived it for most of my life, was when somebody was kind of like maybe boisterous, right? They've got a big ego. They're kind of what's called peacocking, right? Like showing off. I'm the goat, that kind of a mentality, right? And yes, that can be ego, somebody who's attached to their status or their possessions or how much money they have in the bank or how great they think they are or how great they think other people think they are. But ego can also be that really quiet voice in your head that says not nice things to you, that thinks maybe, what if I am a loser? What if I can't do this? What if I can't overcome this? What if I'll never find anybody because I'm unlovable, right? It doesn't have to be such serious thoughts either, but ego is something that, and I know I'm personifying ego. And if my wife were here, she'd be looking at me with a stern face because she doesn't like when I personify ego, right? But it's how I can understand it. It's how I can explain it and express it to you. Even just that statement, how I can express it. Ego is in the I. Ego is in the, this is my personality. These are my feelings. These are my thoughts. I know this could be confusing. But what ego does, it kind of has an agenda. Because in and of itself, it doesn't have a lot of power. But if it can convince you that your anxiety is you and you're drowning in it, then the ego can stick around. The ego gets power and has power over you. One of the easiest ways I can explain this is something I call the river analogy. And again, if you guys have questions, please drop them in the Q&A. So the river analogy is all about if you are having a strong emotion, anxiety, or anything else, or if you are perseverating on a thought or a specific set of thoughts, you can literally feel like you are drowning in them. And I like to visualize that as a river, as a raging river. And still to this day, sometimes I catch myself in it, up to my eyeballs, totally immersed in the emotion and thought. But we have a choice because there's a riverbank right there next to that river. And if we can imagine ourselves stepping out of the river so we're not immersed in it, and standing on the riverbank at a safe distance, right? So we can still see the raging river, which of course is a metaphor for our thoughts and emotions. But at the same time, create some of that space between us and those emotions, those thoughts. Now we can look at it a little bit more objectively. Yes, we're still going to be feeling these thoughts. We're still going to be experiencing these emotions. But we can objectively look at it and say, hey, yeah, I am feeling anxiety about such and such. The ego doesn't want you to do that. The ego wants you to stay in the river because that's how it has power. That's how you stay stuck in the emotion and you get robbed from being in the moment. It's a distraction from being in the moment. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that these practices I'm sharing with you will make it so you don't feel any of these emotions, so that you stop having these thoughts. They're still going to be there. It's more about being able to manage them in a way that they're not so overwhelming, okay?